What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Bass Fishing Declassified. And in today's video, we're gonna have anglers from across the country talk about their favorite area that they like to fish in October. Now let's get into it.
My top October structure to fish are offshore ditches. A ditch is an area of deeper water that cuts into an offshore flat. Offshore flats are basically areas out in the middle of the lake that have very little to no depth change. And then a ditch is going to be a creek channel or some type of deeper water that cuts into that flat. These ditches act as migration routes or highways for bass in the fall. In October, bass are pushing into the backs of creeks and moving into these flats, and they use these ditches to travel deeper into the flats and up into the shallow water areas. My favorite types of lakes to fish offshore ditches on are going to be lowland reservoirs. Common examples of this are going to be a lot of lakes in Texas like Sam Rayburn Lake or Toledo Bend. You also have some lakes over in Alabama like Lake Eufaula, and there's several other lowland reservoirs throughout the country that this pattern or this type of structure works on. Really, the key with these offshore ditches is to try to find a ditch that has a good amount of shad in that ditch. What I'll do is I'll graph with my down imaging and side imaging in these ditches using a contour line map and my fish finder, and I'm looking for shad presence. Once I see some balls of shad in that ditch, I'm going to target the edge of that ditch where the ditch meets the flat, right where that drop off is. I'm looking for rock piles, shell beds, brush piles, any type of cover that's on the edge of the flat where it drops into the ditch, and I'm going to be targeting those areas with shad imitating baits. Some of my favorite types of baits to throw are going to be a deep diving crankbait like this Spro Little John DD. I also fish a little swim bait at times if I'm in clear water areas, like a 3-inch megabass spark shad on a 1/4 ounce jig head. And I'll even bump it up to like a 5-inch spark shad as well if there's bigger shad and bigger bass. And I'll also throw a deep diving jerk bait a lot in these ditches as well. This is the Smithwick Perfect 10 Rogue. Also throw like a Vision 110 +1 or +2 jerk bait from Megabass. Really, your goal is to target the edge of those ditches around any type of cover with bait fish, and you're gonna have to cover a lot of different ditches and graph a lot until you find that perfect combination of bait fish, cover, and fish. But when you do, you can absolutely load the boat, put a lot of fish in the boat in a hurry in October.
I'm going to talk about an area of the lake that I like to fish in October in highland reservoirs across central, southern Arkansas, and even into central and southern Oklahoma. The part of the lakes that I like to target during this month is the back of creeks. And I say back of creeks, I'm talking about the middle section all the way to the back. The reason that I like to target this area during the month of October is because we have the cooler nights coming, the air temperatures dropping, which then means the water temperature is cooling, and we have a migration of shad that go from the main lake down into these creek arms. And there's going to be a bunch of fish from the main lake that's going to follow these shad as well. And then also already in the back of these creeks you have your residential fish. So what happens is you have a bunch of bait back there, you have a lot of other bass in the area, and then they become, their competitors, and then they're going to eat. And they're also eating because they know these shorter days are coming, it's cooler temperatures, they know winter is coming. One thing about fishing the back of the creeks that you need to know is the type of cover you're going to fish. There's so much things that can be in the back of creeks. You can have your underwater grass, which can be your hydrilla, your coontail. You can have standing timber. You can have your brush piles. You can have your stumps. You can have road beds. There's so many different targets that you can go after in the back of these creeks. So before you go fish, you need to do your homework and try to figure out what your lake has to offer as you get into the back of that creek. Now, let's say you even go into the back of a creek and there's not any cover at all. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be any bait fish or bass back there. They're just going to probably be even down your rock banks that could be back there. They could just be out there off the rounded points, or if there's long flat points. So it's okay if there's no cover. It's just for you means you're going to have to go out there and catch them fish suspended. Now, that's not my game. I don't like to go out there and just chase fish around. So I like to know and target the cover that could be offered in the backs of creeks. If I just had to take 2 baits out and go fish the back of a creek, one's going to be a lipless crankbait and then the other one's going to be a jig. My lipless crankbait, I'm going to have it be more of a shad pattern, and that's going to be my tool to go after the fish that are keying on shad. You can fish a lipless crankbait a lot of different ways. You can throw it at a lot of different pieces of cover, and my jig is going to be my my tool that's going to be to imitate the crawfish, or going to be to imitate the brim. Because as you get in the back of these creeks, let's say there's brush piles back there that can be anywhere from 8 to 15 foot of water, or even shallower. You know, you can throw the rattle trap down each side, but you can throw that jig in it. Or if you see a lay down, you can flip the jig there, and just like I said, so I like to have those two baits on my deck as I'm fishing the back of a creek. One little tip for y'all just on fishing back of creeks: you're not going to go in the back of every one and catch fish, okay? There's going to be times where some bait fish and bass move in sooner, and some are going to move in later. I know down here in the south, sometimes I actually jump the gun too quick, and I will go way back in the back. So that's why I like to start in the middle. But like I said, each creek is different, so just keep that in mind. You might go to one creek and catch them right in the middle. There might be some drains back there, or some rounded points with some brush, and you go to the next creek and try to do the same thing, and it might not happen. They might already be way back in the back. So just keep that in mind. This time of year, the fish, each creek is like, it's different way of where the fish are at. So don't just get stuck in that, hey, I caught him in the back of this one, I got to go in every other one. Now at times it might happen that way, I know, but I know down here in the south, man, these fish, you know, these cool nights are coming, but then again, we might have like another couple hot days like we just had here recently, where, you know, a week ago it was 50 degree nights, 70 degree days, and all of a sudden we had 98 degree temperatures. So in this month of October, the temperatures you know, vary. So with that, the fish are at each section of the lake are going to be varying as well.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Bass Fishing Declassified. And today we're going to give you guys some tips and advice on how to catch bass off of secondary points during the fall in the Ozark area lakes, or really any other highland lake. It's going to work there too. So a couple different things you need to realize here. A lot of it, what you need to look for, is dependent upon the water clarity, sky conditions, and the wind. In the fall time of the year, there's bass can really use these secondary points in a wide range of water depths. You can catch bass right up on the bank on topwater lures, you know, like in less than 5 feet of water, especially under low light conditions, early in the morning, later in the evening, on those cloudy, rainy days. Or you can catch bass out, you know, 30, 40, 50 feet deep on the same points that are either suspended out there or on the bottom, like on drop shots or spoons or football head jigs and that type of stuff. So one of the things you have to do is really pay close attention to the weather condition. If you have one of those nasty cloudy type days where the wind's blowing, it's going to put those fish up shallower on those points, and they're going to hit moving baits. A lot of times if you have wind and nasty conditions, a spinner bait, a crankbait, again the top waters, a big swim bait in less than, you know, 7 feet of water in and around the point ends and sides are going to be really good. And if you have a day out there that it's slick and calm, bright, sunny, that type of deal, a lot of those fish are going to be out deeper on those points. So one of the things you can do is graph around a little bit, sort of graph in that sort of that 20 to 40 foot zone, get a feel if there's many bait fish out there, if there's many fish, if you see much sign of life. If there are, you know, try fishing out there a little bit, and if not, move shallow to the bank. And a lot of it also, you can run patterns on these depending upon the angle of point. Sometimes they're on the flatter points, sometimes they're on the steeper points, sometimes they're on both of them. So a lot of it, like I said, when you're trying to find bass on these points in the fall time of the year, let the weather dictate your technique and your approach. And once you do that, you're going to capitalize on every aspect that's going on the lake during that time when you're out there. So anyway, I hope those tips help, and we'll see you guys next time.
In the northern part of the country, if you're fishing current, you need to recognize that both current can be a positive and a negative. What I mean by that is if you're chasing smallmouth will absolutely still be using the current. They'll winter right in the current, so they're going to be using the same locations that they were using for a lot of the summer months. If you're chasing largemouth and there's current in the body of water that you're fishing, generally speaking, during the month of October, they're going to move away from that current. They're going to start heading back into the backwaters and the shallower areas that they used probably to spawn. They're looking for the hard targets where they can absorb some heat from those targets that are absorbing sunlight. So you want to recognize what you're looking for. If you are fishing in the current, some of the things that you're going to want to look for are current eddies that have deep water next to them. The bigger the eddy, the better they're going to be as we start moving into these cold water periods. So I'm talking about not necessarily just an eddy that you have one rock forming, but maybe you have a large rock pile with a good current seam downstream of it with some deeper water behind that rock pile. Those are going to be your ideal places to look. You know, at this time of year, the smallmouth are going to start grouping up a little bit more. They're not going to be isolated behind tiny little eddies like they used to be. It's just one of those things where they start migrating as well, and they end up finding the similar areas, which means when you locate them, generally speaking, there's going to be a bunch of additional fish there. One of the biggest keys of advice I can give you during the month of October around current is to make lots of different casting angles at these eddies. A lot of times your current seams and your eddies that are formed by these larger objects are going to be quite large, and therefore your bait's not going to make the same presentation every time you make the same cast. So make a lot of casts and make a lot of casts from different angles, and eventually you'll locate what cast those fish want. Your bait presentation is still going to be about the same as it would be during the summer months. The difference is going to be your presentation. You're going to want to work those baits much slower, especially during the back half of the month of October. You're still going to be using your lipless crankbaits, your crankbaits, your top waters. You're going to be dragging baits like a football head jig, maybe a drop shot, maybe a Carolina rig. The key here is in the beginning of the month, if you still have warmer water temperature, those fish will chase some. They'll come up and hit a topwater bait, they'll hit a crankbait. But as you move towards the low end of the 50-degree range, a lot of those fish are not going to be as aggressive, and you're going to have to let a bait soak down where they're at. So that's where your Carolina rigs, that's where your football head jigs will come into play, because those fish just are not going to be as aggressive.
Hey guys, Cortiana here. I'm going to take a few quick minutes and talk to you about why fishing humps in October on the TVA lakes is going to be a great way for you to go out and catch more fish. So the first thing you want to know is, how do you find the humps on the lake? The easiest way you can do it is use your Lowrance graphs, use your bathymetric data, look for those high spots. You're looking for closed circles on your map. If it's a closed circle, it's either a deep hole or a high hump. You can label your contours. You're looking for the shallow humps. And when I'm saying shallow, I'm saying 12 foot or less. Those are going to be your shallower humps. And the reason those are so important in October on the TVA is a lot of grass grows along the TVA. And grass can't grow if the sun can't penetrate the bottom. So you want the shallow humps so the grass can grow. You can also visibly see this with your eyes. If grass is growing and it's a really shallow hump, it'll grow all the way up the top and it'll top out. And you'll either see the grass topped out, or if the waves are rolling along from the wind, the topped out grass will cause the waves to stop. You'll see like a calm spot in the water. See the same thing if there's bait there. But most likely, you're gonna have bait around these shallow humps that have grass on them. You wanna look for the ones that are at the mouths of pockets and at the mouths of creeks, and start working your way back further up in the creek. As you get further into the month of October, you get your cooler rains coming in. It brings in cooler water, and the fish and bait start to migrate back that way. So early October, look more towards the mouths. Late October, you can start scooting your way back into the creeks. But those are going to be the best humps. The other thing you need to know is, how do you position your boat and what baits do you want to throw at these humps? So the best thing I can tell you is you want to position your boat just a half to 3/4 cast off of the humps, off of these targeted areas. So you're looking for these humps, you're looking for grass growing on the edges, and you're trying to identify where that grass stops. The edge of that grass, where it stops, where the hump bails off into deep enough water, that's going to be where you target. So you either want to get parallel to that grass and throw parallel along the edge of the grass, or you want to sit out away from it and cast to it at an angle. So you're coming over maybe some of the top of the grass that isn't topped out and ticking it as you leave. Those bass will be sitting right on that hard edge on the outside, or they'll actually be in some of that grass. And a lot of times it's topped out all the way in the shallower part of the hump. And for those, you're going to need different bait techniques. So the first technique, if you just want to fish the whole hump in the grass as a whole, which is what I like to do, you want to start furthest out so you're not interfering with the fish's natural behavior. I'm going to start out on the edge, and I'm going to throw jerk baits. I'm going to throw a small jerk bait. I'm going to throw a medium-sized jerk bait. I'm going to throw whatever I can to most match the hatch and see what the fish are going for. And I'm going to work that around the outside edge of that grass and over the top of some of that grass that it isn't topped out yet. If that's not working, or if I want to try to get a few more bites, I'm going to go straight into my rattle trap. I love throwing a rattle trap on the TVA, especially when there's grass. But in October, it's really hard to beat a rattle trap when the bait get all pushed up by these big schools of bass, and they're burning and turning, they're competing for food, pick you up a rattle trap and reel it across the tops of that grass and along the edge of that grass. Then as you move up on the shallowest part of the grass, you're gonna have matted out grass. Whenever you got matted out grass, you're gonna have sections where there's holes or clumps in it, whether there's shell growing on the bottom and so there's no grass there and there's a hole, or there's just a spot that a fish is inhabited and he's blowing up and he's making a hole in the grass. Either way, there's two great ways to fish out topped out grass. A little booyah pad crasher. This is a junior. You can throw a junior, a really small one if you got small shad flicking around in the grass. This one's perch colored. You could have one with a white belly, more shad colored, but there's gonna be both shad and perch in that grass. So you can try both of these frog colors, and you know, the more sparse that grass is in the holes, the more this frog's gonna come into play. If it's completely topped out, like everywhere you go, you can't even hardly get your boat in there. Get in there with a big, anywhere from a 3/4 ounce to a 2 ounce weight, Texas rig it, and pick your favorite creature bait. Mine are the Yum Christie Craws. I'm always gonna have a black and blue and something green pumpkin red. These are gonna be the two colors I'm gonna throw. It's gonna be hard to know what the water clarity is and what those fish are keying on there. And the color of craws, and there's a lot of crawfish in the TVA, but the color of the crawfish is based on the acidity of the water. A lot of people don't know that. The acidity of the water changes the color of these. So unless you got a pH tester and you understand that the acidity is high, if it's a really high acidity, I think you're gonna get more of an orange, kind of reddish orange in your craw. If it's a real basic or neutral acidity, I think you're gonna see a lot more blues and purples. But either way, I like to try both. I let the bass tell me. I let them be my pH indicator. One really cool tip that a lot of people forget to do, I've mentioned all these baits, but if you're talking about a rattle trap and you're getting some bites on it, don't be afraid to tie a little tiny one on. Literally, we just got off of Gunnersville and you can see the teeth marks on this booyah trap. I put this on a little spinning rod for my wife and she made 30 casts in a row and caught a fish. And all I did was tell her, throw this little one out there and reel it back as fast as you can. So don't be afraid to downsize. Don't be afraid to burn that bait back in. It's gonna get you a few extra strikes in the month of October on the TVAs.
Really quick, if you enjoy the content on this channel and are looking for something to listen to while you drive to the lake or while you're at work, check out the Fish the Moment podcast. We upload the audio from all of our YouTube videos as well as our live streams to the podcast. You can find it on Spotify or on the Apple Podcasts app. While you're there, leave us a 5-star review. Now back to the video.
Thank y'all for watching today's video of Bass Fishing Declassified on our top areas of October for different anglers from different part of the country. Please leave us a comment on what you think about the video. We're hoping you're enjoying the new channel and the new content that we're providing. Please like and subscribe, share the video, and then once again, give us a comment what you think and if some different topics you want us to hear about. I know you're going to try to see, what we're going to try to give to y'all as viewers is a Monday and Friday is going to be a video of a potentially 3 anglers or more. And then on Wednesdays, if we post a video, it will be more of a bonus. It could be just a single angler talking about a topic or a strategy. It could be 2 anglers. It could be a catch 15. But we have a couple different ideas that we're going to do to try to get y'all 2 to 3 videos a week. Once again, thank y'all for watching. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time.